Alright, chat, that's 24 hours. Thanks for those that stuck with me. Those jumped out, jumped in, all good. Just awesome that you joined me. So, no donos for the 24 hours, but that's cool. We had a lot of chatters. Great. Poggers. Whoa! $1 donation. Thanks, man. And any donation means a punishment on the wheel. So, let's spin it. Hope I don't have to eat this hat, right? Made a blanket fort. Sue me. Okay, so when I first saw Zack Snyder's Justice League, I walked away with exactly 2 thoughts. Because my brain has limited capacity. No, that wasn't it. I had 2 thoughts. First, I like this movie. I really like this movie. And I saw 2017's Justice League in 2017, oddly enough. And for the life of me, I couldn't tell you what happened in it. Lady Bird came out in the same year, and that film has had a lasting impact on me. And second, this movie is way too damn long. 4 hours? Are you kidding me? But did it have to be that long? As the months went by and I reflected back on the film, this thought burrowed into my head like an earworm, but for thoughts. Thought worm. Is that a thing? Anyway, I started running the scenes through my head over and over and over. I could cut that out. That runs a little long. I could get rid of that entirely. Now, I'm an amateur video editor of sorts, and hey, why not just do it? So I acquired a copy of that 4-hour behemoth and I got to work. The first pass, Willem Dafoe just had to go.
Take up your mother's trident.
Sorry, Willem. Along with all the title cards between parts.
Bruce Wayne. Bruce Wayne. Bruce Wayne. Bruce Wayne.
And any slow-mo section that went... I can't just stop there. Up to this point, I've tried to be delicate. I could go further, so I went back in, this time with more of a hacksaw than a scalpel. I started chopping up more and more. How can every scene be shorter? Even if actors have to talk at the same time. Whatever.
Anything on that kid from the liquor store?
Possibly.
Possibly. If I had $1 for every possibly.
Yeah, make you even more insufferable.
Anything on that kid from the liquor store?
Possibly. Facial scan might have got a hit on him. One, Mr. Barry Allen.
And by the end of all this, I had cut 25 minutes. And I'm sitting there at my computer. That's it. That's as far as I can go. Or is it? Should I cut the nightmare post-credit scene? Doesn't really add anything. It makes sense for an extended cut, but it isn't necessary. And at this point, I realized something. I'm editing 2017's Zack Snyder's Justice League. In 2016, Batman vs. Superman: Dawn of Justice was released to audiences everywhere. I think. I didn't check. Yeah, it looks like a worldwide release. Cool. In the months before its release, speculation rose that Warner Brothers were considering cancelling the DCEU and that Zack Snyder would be let go. However, Snyder shortly confirmed that Justice League Part 1 had been approved and was set to start shooting a mere 15 days after the theatrical premiere of BVS, for which pre-release viewings reportedly elicited rave reactions. Then, months after the months before the release of BVS, when BVS was released, audiences got to see for themselves and, well...
Why did you say that name?
Why did you say that name? That's gonna peak the... Anyway, after the first weekend, BVS was reported to have the fourth highest grossing weekend of all time at the time, despite the dearth of critics warning that the film lacked fun or otherwise was not thought-provoking. The ultimate confrontation was underdeveloped, and too much of its runtime was dedicated to teasers for coming sequels. It was spectacle over substance, with a plot that was muddled and confusing. And audiences heard those warnings and promptly ignored them, coming out in record numbers. CinemaScore's exit polls had audiences grading it at a B, which is fine. It's not bad. It's not great, but still. Interestingly, the same score as Green Lantern got, so that bodes well for many weekends to come. Vulture said it would have no trouble cruising past the $1 billion mark, and thanks to more record-breaking weekends, it did not. It did not. It dropped approximately 69% in its second weekend, the steepest drop for a superhero movie since 2003's Ang Lee's Hulk. And with a further drop of 54% in its third weekend, that $1 billion gross was becoming more and more distant. BVS closed out its theatrical run with a box office gross of just over $870 million worldwide, below those $1 billion expectations. 4 months later, the Ultimate Edition was released on home media, with over 30 additional minutes, and was lauded as being intelligible, coherent, and a functional movie. Meanwhile, the CEO at WB assigned babysitters to Snyder with an edict to push for a lighter tone to Justice League, seemingly in response to the perceived criticisms of BVS. Then, in early 2017, Snyder delivered his first cut of Justice League. Their response? Make it shorter and even lighter. Specifically, that it should be 2 hours long. According to sources, one of Snyder's babysitters, Jeff Johns, brought Joss Whedon on board to bring that lighter tone. Ideally, something akin to what he had delivered in 2012 with the first Avengers film, although, as far as I can find, that is still unconfirmed. As Whedon acquired greater and greater creative control over the project, Snyder and his family were struck by incredible tragedy. In March of 2017, Zack Snyder lost his daughter Autumn to suicide. Initially, the thought was to throw himself into his work, which I find understandable. You think you can distract yourself, but as soon as you come up against any difficulty, it feels helpless. With the studio and Whedon redirecting the film both figuratively and literally, the fight for his vision and creative compromise became too much. Zack and his wife and producing partner, Deborah Snyder, left the project. Now, movies don't just get made on the fly. No one grabs a camera, says, "This place looks cool," points it at an actor, and says, "Say something funny."
Joke around with each other a little bit. Joke around. Have fun with each other a little bit. Joke around. Say something smart to her.
Okay, well, most don't. There's usually a script. It's written and then rewritten. There's a bunch of pre-production, budgeting, etc. I mean, that is becoming a problem. There's way too many movie budgets these days that are blowing out to beyond $200 million, but I will get to that. At some point, the script for Justice League hits someone's desk, probably around 200 to 250 pages, and if you approve that, you're making a 4-hour movie. You might think you can cut it down later, but that is a huge waste of time and money, shooting stuff you'll never use. And unless you can rip 100 pages out of that thing, the plot is going to suffer. It's BVS all over again. Now, don't get me wrong. 2 hours makes a lot of sense. I get it. Mo showings, mo money. Per theater, a 2-hour movie, you're likely getting 4 to 5 showings per day. And 2.5 to 3, it's more like 3 to 4. And that's if the cinema can dedicate a theater to your film. I don't know, what's your other options? Split it in half and sell 2 tickets? Audience are probably going to be pissed because you're already asking a lot for 1 ticket, but fuck it. Make it an event. Do something bold.
Doesn't need you.
Not that. Something else. Something bold, but not that. If you have the Blu-ray of Zack Snyder's Justice League, you already know that feels like.
are 6, not 5. There's no us without him.
So that's the brief. Keep it light, make it short. Okay, let's start by setting it to a widescreen aspect ratio. We're trying to make a mainstream blockbuster superhero movie here. So I was already 25 minutes down, 3 hours and 35 minutes, a far cry from the 2 hours mandated by WB. Originally, I was trying to preserve as many of the new scenes as possible. Flash and Iris, it's very funny, a lot of good visual gags. I don't know if this was on purpose, but a burger shop called Burger Shop, that tickled me. And it acted as a good introduction to Flash's powers, but it's gone, mostly. I did keep this as the establishing shot for the later Flash scene.
Because you are holding yourself back.
Reduced speed ahead, very good. Just a good pun. Cyborg's backstory, also gone. And I really liked it too. The cinematography of that football scene, this dialogue.
He wanted to be here.
You always say that. You gotta stop making excuses for him. You're just as busy as he is, but you still make the time.
It's natural and relatable, and sets up Cyborg's character and his frayed relationship with his father. But it had to go, along with the explanation of his powers, which was an interesting combination of showing and telling, in which the exposition also added to Silas's characterization.
What you can do now, Victor. Your physical strength is just the tip of the iceberg.
The world's monetary systems and its complex interactions will seem as easy to manipulate for you as a child's plaything.
As a father.
The nightmare scenario and any setup for a larger universe, all the Martian Manhunter scenes, any of the setup for the Atom, that's all gone. Just needed to streamline literally everything. However, all of this hardcore removal had its consequences. The Flash and Iris scene appears after the scene where Diana arrives at aerospace and acts as a cover for the jump in time between those scenes. So it now looks like this.
The others. Where are they?
He must be an Atlantean. A water breather.
Like, it's okay, but it's jarring. So what was left from the previously mentioned Cyborg scene was brought forward and was followed by the one where Aquaman saves the rando fisherman to bridge this gap, which transitions back, hopefully quite naturally, but I'll let you be the judge.
This was taken in the deepest trench on Earth. He must be an Atlantean.
I also shaved time off the scene where Superman picks out his new drip. I probably removed about 60 to 70% of the paternal voiceover and shifted things around. Clark's dads don't need to tell him they love him. Feelings are gross. So, I like the scene, but it is too long. I don't know if I made it better, but this part made me feel things.
It's time.
Another 50 minutes gone. I'm at 2 hours and 45 minutes. Now it's getting hard. I can't really cut anything without ruining the pacing or opening massive plot holes. I feel like I understand a little bit about what it was like editing BVS. You have a good 3-hour movie, but that's not what the studio wants. So you cut more and more, and the plot becomes incomplete. The characters are two-dimensional. Their motivations are unclear. The villain's plans make little sense. Today, as I sit here, Stephen James's 2017 Zack Snyder's Justice League is 2 hours and 37 minutes. I made a visual representation of my cut against Snyder's cut just for you. So anyone else watching this, look away. It's just for you. As you can see, it has a few gaps, and it's also shorter. I ended up cutting Diana's recapping of Darkseid's first attempt at invading Earth and one of Steppenwolf's scenes. It wasn't super vital. Steppenwolf's character overall and his motivations are weakened by cutting it. And the loss of the Darkseid flashback means that A small plot hole is opened up later in the movie when Batman mentions the Unity. You just have to assume that Wonder Woman told everyone off screen what she'd learnt in the National Treasure-esque chamber underneath the Shrine of the Amazons. I also swapped the post-credit scene on Luthor's yacht for the one from Justice League because it's shorter. It saves time. I could maybe get it under 2.5 hours, but for my own sanity, I need to stop. I'm happy with where it is right now. And the more I cut, the worse the movie left becomes. Even though this is an episode of a larger cinematic universe, it should largely stand alone. A complete story, a beginning, middle, and end. The beginning needs to set up the characters, the villain, and the stakes. The tension should satisfyingly build and crescendo. And if I didn't care about those things, I could start removing proper introductions for each character / villain, or their motivations, or the development of the stakes, or all three. And if I did that, it would be a 2-hour and 2-minute abomination. And I know that because I did a rough cut just to see what it would be like, and it is terrible. This is the extent of Steppenwolf obtaining the second Mother Box. He has it now, and then Aquaman says he took the Mother Box from Atlantis. That's it. He just has it. I had to cut the fight. It's too long. Like, if this was the beginning of the movie, and it was just set up for the events of this film, that's fine. The movie actually becomes trying to stop him finding the third box. He's already got the first two, and now you need to stop the third one and take on Darkseid. It could be the basis for a 2-hour movie, but this is step 2 of the villain's plan. The escalation of the stakes. It's part of the inflection point of the plot. Also, there's no setup for Lois visiting the monument. She kind of becomes a Deus Ex Machina, and when Flash says this...
Who is that?
The audience is thinking the same thing, because he's not in this movie up until this point, 45 minutes in. Any recognizable protagonist appears maybe 20 minutes in, and that's too long. It's a bad movie. Like, the plot kind of makes sense if you work at it, but the pacing is terrible, and nothing is given the time or space to breathe to elicit any emotion. Like I mentioned earlier, the art of pre-production in these big-budget movies is being lost. Studios throw a bunch of money at a project, film as much as possible, mostly on green screen, and think, we'll fix it in post. Advances in technology have made it easier for executives and producers to give notes later and later into production that can actually be implemented. In decades past, at some point, it was too late. At some point, the movie was done. The shots were in the can. There was only so much you could change in the editing room. Not that there can't be magic in the editing room, and there's dozens of stories of movies that were saved in the edit, but it's more about the flow and pacing of scenes, not creating scenes almost whole cloth. For example, this shot of Wonder Woman cutting off Steppenwolf's head. This is shot on green screen and can be placed anywhere. Right, Joss? And it seems that this has given license to studios to slack off on pre-production and meddle later and later into production. If you wanted a lighter movie, if you wanted a shorter movie, maybe halt production, reset, try again. Maybe you don't have to have your big superhero team-up movie coming out next year just because the competition does. In my opinion, there isn't a lighthearted 2-hour movie in that script. Don't just assume you'll be able to fix it later, because I don't think you know what that means, and we all know how that turned out. Now, I've seen these movies like 20 times, and as a result, I have a bunch of notes, and I don't know what to do with them. I don't just want to keep them to myself, so I'm just gonna run them. Hey, this place must seem pretty familiar to Bruce, having climbed these peaks in his youth in search of a blue flower. They just look similar. Did you see that? It's small, but Alfred starts up the stairs behind Bruce, and then he hasn't moved. He's back just watching Bruce walk up the stairs. You're going to have to get used to these. There's a lot of these small continuity errors throughout this movie. I think mostly because they didn't cut a lot. It's 4 hours. For example, this terrorist puts on his hat in the wide shot, and then he puts his hat on again. There'll be more, but for now, I'll just keep going down my list. I will bathe in your fear.
I will bathe in your fear.
Did this line get bastardized into the entire plot for Justice League? I meant to say Justice League more specifically. If you don't remember the plot, I mean, what's wrong with you? And for the life of me, I couldn't tell you what happened in it. Shut up! In case you need a refresher, Earth is without hope, which, as we all know, is like a karma chameleon.
Does your thing really stand for hope?
Yes, it comes and goes.
Ah, yes. The planet has been invaded by parademons, beings converted into servants of Darkseid by the Mother Boxers, who also smell fear or something. It wasn't super clear. They just really love fear, like super horny for fear. Here's my theory. 1, it's a PG-13 movie. It's just cleaner if the bad guys attack each other and then disappear into the sky. And 2, I think Joss Whedon noticed that at some point in Zack Snyder's version, the parademons just disappear. This is the last appearance of a parademon in that movie. Was it the last parademon on Earth that shot the Flash? That's convenient. This arguably solves what some might consider a plot hole. And while we're on the point of 2017's Justice League, I might address some of the overarching changes that I thought were interesting. In Zack Snyder's Justice League, it is the story of heroes doing their own thing in the world, saving people, hunting things, who come together when the world needs them. But in 2017's Justice League, the invasion of the parademons permeate everything. Aquaman doesn't just save a random fisherman who went out to sea in a storm. He saves a guy whose boat was damaged by a parademon falling out of the sky.
Something came down from the sky!
Wonder Woman doesn't save kids and barristers from random terrorists. She saves them from religious fanatics who believe that the parademons are a holy punishment for humanity's sins.
Now, who are you?
We're a small group of reactionary terrorists. We know that sin has brought on this plague of aliens.
Why the hostages?
I don't think either is necessarily better, but I find it interesting that those tiny changes can vastly affect the themes of the film. Just some goo on Aquaman's hand and a couple of lines, that's it. A weirder change was to Steppenwolf and Darkseid. Darkseid is no longer a looming threat over the plot, so Steppenwolf goes from a zealot of Darkseid trying to earn back favor to an Oedipus with a box fetish. I love you, mother. Oh man, I love boxes. Mother. Alright, anyway, back to the notes. For a movie that insists on showing everything, where did all these Amazons come from? Like, there's one Amazon, and then there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like lots of, multiple Amazon. And on the other end, here's the queen of the Amazon. And arrow, no arrow. Arrow, no arrow. Arrow, no arrow. Arrow, no arrow. I did this for quite a long time while I was editing. I'm easily amused. Wonder Woman crosses her arms in the wide and then again in the medium close-up. I mean, that thing about the burger shop, that's good. But why are we even talking about that when Iris West has the power to phase through glass? Is this Miss Martian? Like, where are the internet theories on this one? Why is no one talking about this? It's so obvious. Is it just me? She phased through that glass. That aside, there's a couple about Barry attending the prison. In 2017's Justice League, Batman doesn't know where Barry is hiding out, so he needs an inside man at the prison to tell him when he visits. But, like, what's your plan, Batman? Just, like, track him back to his base? What if he runs back at flash speed? Batman already knows that he has some kind of power that lets him travel between two places very quickly. Like, he disappears for a fraction of a frame. But then Bruce gets there first? Is this, like, the next day or something? Batman is the world's greatest detective. Audiences weren't gonna wonder, like, how he did it. But I am now. What's up, Whedon?
I am a drag on your life.
Pun intended? Question mark? Not why I'm here. Did he actually say that? Like, you can see the side of his mouth. It doesn't quite look right.
I am a drag on your life. I am a drag on your life.
Next ones, I might bundle these few together because they're kind of related. Foley is the art of creating sounds for everyday sounds. The trick is not necessarily in producing sounds that are true to life, but in producing sounds that are verisimilitudinous. It needs to seem real in the context. Being accurate might be unbelievable to audiences. When watching a movie, you'll quickly hear a noise in passing, and if it's believable enough, you won't question it. But when you're editing a particular scene, listening to it over and over again, it starts driving you a bit insane. Like, what the fuck is this key noise? Clink? What? I didn't personally like the order of this scene in which Wonder Woman MacGyvers a torch. Why are you dipping that rag in the oil? You don't even know if you've got matches yet. You're just walking around with a oily rag dripping everywhere. Oh, look, you found matches. That was lucky. Lucky you. Look, here's the order that made sense to me. I'm showing it to you more for completeness than anything else. Like, my truth isn't the only truth. The point is, what is this? I don't know what a box of matches sounds like, but I don't think that's what it sounds like. And this last one isn't really Foley, but it is sound related. After watching Zack Snyder's Justice League feels rather empty, acoustically. I think this particular scene will illustrate my point.
You're the Batman? I'm putting together a team. People with special abilities. You see, I believe enemies are coming.
Stop right there. I'm in.
You're the Batman? I'm putting together a team. People with special abilities. You see, I believe enemies are coming.
Stop right there. I'm in.
I trust that my point is made. However, Snyder's version sometimes feels overproduced with its sound. Like, why is this weird drum line here?
Fluent in sign language? Gorilla sign language.
Because he said gorilla? Like, it doesn't really add anything. It kind of pieces into the next bit. It just seems either out of place or related to the gorilla line, and it just felt weird. Now, this scene was cut from my version, but seems to have made its way into Whedon's version somehow with a twist. In Stephen James's Justice League, Batman's gauntlets absorb energy fire. Get over it. In Snyder's version, Alfred lines the gauntlets with panels that dissipate energy. It gave, Alfred something to do. And, if anyone was like, why did he deflect energy? Don't worry about it. He's Batman. Whedon also cut it, but he needed something for Alfred to do, apparently. So the parademons are allergic to ambulance sirens or something now. And Bruce and Alfred install a subwoofer in the Batmobile, like they're on Pimp My Ride, and it just calls the parademons to you. Also, Whedon probably thought that it was unbelievable that all of the parademons attacked Batman at once, so needed some kind of provocation, hence sirens. Not what I would have done.
When we bombard it with X-rays from the electron laser, look what happens.
$3.5 million Kelvin.
I mean, at those levels, it's at worst a rounding error, but that does say Celsius. Hey, do you remember that scene in Jurassic Park where the T-Rex saves them from the velociraptors? I'd show a clip, but I'm not really critiquing that film, so fair use is a bit shaky on that one. But you know how whenever the T-Rex moves around, the ground shook, and yet to achieve this reveal, the T-Rex needs to appear out of nowhere? And yet, no one really wondered how the kids didn't see it. Like, audiences just, yeah, okay, that's cool. Well, I give you...
Victor.
Yeah, okay, so there's this scene in Zack Snyder's Justice League where Martha, Kent, not Wayne, goes to visit Lois, and they have this quite touching scene about grief and the need to carry on. It's quite a raw scene, but it is kind of a downer. So in 2017's Justice League, they keep the general idea of the scene, but they shift it to the Daily Planet with a joke about Lois being thirsty for Clark. But, aren't we all? Especially with that mustache. It does build their relationship, but in this version, who cares?
I will die before I tell you.
You'll die if you don't.
I think we're saying the same thing here.
I'll put on the tea. Great. I don't know where we're going to find the cups.
You're a billionaire. Buy more than one cup. Does Alfred have a cup? Does Alfred have a cup? So they have tea and decide to do a resurrection thing. But first they need to dig up Superman's body. And in this part, Whedon changed a couple of things. One, there's this joke about fist bumping being racially charged.
That's the plan. Okay, we're not ready for racially charged.
It kind of works as a setup to a payoff at the end of the film, which is present in both versions and didn't really need a setup, but one version, due to a 2-hour mandate, may have suffered from some characterization and character relationships being half-baked, which makes this scene feel less earned. It's not just his relationship with the Flash. Cyborg overall is one of the main casualties of the cuts in 2017's Justice League.
Let me just stop you right there. Originally, this section of the script also mentioned the changes made to Flash's character and story, but then I rewatched 2017's Justice League. Unlike Cyborg, which I will get back to, there is still a lot of Flash in Joss Whedon's version, so I removed that rant. But then, while editing this video, I actually do care about this. Yes, there's still a lot of Flash in it, but what is there is a husk of its former self. As a member of the team, he's superfluous at best and a hindrance at worst. He's only still there because he tested well for his comic relief value. Because, think about it, if he wasn't in 2017's Justice League, would it change the plot one iota? I suppose he does provide the electrical charge to wake the mother box, but if he wasn't there, Cyborg or Batman would just patch into the city's electrical grid or something, and they would have found a way. Then, at the end, he's meant to be saving all the Russians in the vicinity of the growing danger tentacles, but Superman shows up to pretty much do all of it, while the Flash is there holding the Player 2 controller that ain't plugged in. In Zack Snyder's Justice League, each member of the team is an essential part of the whole. There are 6, not 5, or 4, or 3. I'm gonna stop now. And without the Flash, everyone dies. The Earth dies. Justice League does the Flash so dirty that the scene in Zack Snyder's version where the Flash enters the Speed Force comes as such a surprise. It's insane to me that this scene was cut, but then again, it was the culmination of a character arc that no longer exists. Because in 2017's Justice League, the Flash has no character. He is fodder for jokes, and that's it. Okay, rant over. Back to what I was saying about Cyborg.
In the Snyder Cut, Cyborg's backstory is incredibly tragic. A car accident that killed his mother and may have never happened but for his father's absence. This creates an interesting dynamic and a deeper character. To edit this out, they removed all of it and just put in one line about a nondescript explosion.
And you...
Explosion. Woke up in the lab.
Okay, next I've got... Oh, it's all the way in the third act. Batman says, whatever you see, stick to the plan. Or is that don't wait for me, just do the job.
Don't wait for me. Just do the job. Whatever you see, stick to the plan.
That's not shorter, or significantly different. But Whedon replaced the scene where the team comes up with a plan, so he has to retroactively fill in that they had a plan. And because originally it flowed on from the previous line, inserting the new line affects that, so he had to change the next line as well. That was not the point I wanted to make. I actually wanted to praise the Justice League for something, and I haven't even got there yet, but that previous point sounded also like a critique as well. So, the scene that Whedon replaced the scene of them coming up with the plan was reasonably good. Aquaman sits on Wonder Woman's lasso and gives a speech about how he doesn't want to die and he has a ton of regrets, and Wonder Woman is attractive, which she is, but I don't know. Something about Joss Whedon writing that and the things we later found out about, it's weird. Like, I think it plays well in the theater. Like, she takes the compliment. She doesn't seem to be offended or anything. And she's kind of got the upper hand because she's playing a prank on him. Plus, it's Jason Momoa, and, you know, he's got Riz, as the kids used to say before the olds got hold of it. Like, overall, it's funny and endearing. Anyway, before I got distracted on that tangent, I was actually going to say that Whedon took the sentiments of that Batman line and did something interesting with it, I think. The line suggests that Batman has a death wish, basically. He's going to take on the parademons alone and has no illusions about surviving that onslaught. What is implicit becomes explicit in 2017's Justice League. I felt a more emotional impact of the Justice League coming together when they go back for Bruce, when they refuse to leave him to die.
Oh, son of a bitch.
Oh, snap! You're welcome!
Damn! This isn't the plan.
No, Master Wayne. This is the team.
See your genius move? It's dying. You really are out of your mind.
I'm not the one who brought a pitchfork.
Ba 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 ba. Ba 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 ba. Ba ba ba. Oh, right. Here's a scene that I presume was shot for the original script of Justice League, because the mouths line up.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
And here's the Whedon edit.
Ride ain't over yet.
His mouth just goes... Da, 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 da. It made me laugh anyway. And I'm not saying I'm perfect. Have a look at this scene towards the end of the film.
Just gotta go faster than the speed of light, far beyond the speed of light. Gotta break the rule, Barry, and you gotta do it now.
Did you notice that? Every time I watch it, I notice it. It feels wrong. And then I remember, oh, that was my fault. I did that. It's the eye lines. The camera changes from the left side of the flash to the right side. And this is because I wanted this transition earlier. And because in the original, Flash runs from left to right and then pans out to him running counterclockwise. And I flipped the video so that he would run right to left like Wonder Woman does. To maintain continuity, I had to flip every Flash scene when he's outside. So rather than being shot in the left, he has to be shot on the right. But at some point, he needs to enter the nuclear cooling tower with the rest of the battle and will need to be flipped back. I mean, this was just the moment I chose to flip it back. It was going to be weird in any case, but the transition was staying, so fuck off. And that's all I've got. I feel like I've seen every possible version of Justice League that we could have gotten in 2017. The 2-hour version is mandated by the studio, both the one we actually got, Snyder, and the one that would have entailed ripping out half of the Snyder Cut. A 2.5-hour edit that you could imagine being the result of compromises between the studio and Snyder. It's flawed and contains a few plot holes of varying severity, but it would likely have been the cut released in theaters, with a more complete 3-hour Ultimate Edition released on home media a few months later, a la BVS. I doubt we would have ever seen a full 4-hour version in 2017, even on Blu-ray or streaming. The only reason we got here is because of an online campaign that persisted for years. #release the Snyder Cut. Now I'm looking at all of this in retrospect. Personally, I wasn't involved in the movement, merely aware of the little that penetrated the zeitgeist. I had no particular attachment to the Snyderverse. Man of Steel was alright, I enjoyed it. BVS was a little too silly for me. It strained credulity, but Wonder Woman and Aquaman were fun. If it stopped one day, if they cancelled the Snyderverse... I'm not a huge Snyder fan myself. I saw Watchmen and Sucker Punch when they came out, and I was about 17, 18. Watchmen had cool moments, but I never really got it. I might be wrong about this because I haven't seen it in nearly 15 years, but I feel like that movie had a first act vibe for more than half of the movie. And Sucker Punch, well, I remember we rented it from Blockbuster one weekend, and that front cover is not what that movie is. From memory, it's about a group of young women in a mental asylum who imagine themselves to be badass Kill Bill types. It's bizarre and confusing. Like, what is reality in this movie? And not really what I was after for a Saturday night in with the fam. It probably wasn't until Batman vs. Superman that I was even aware of the name Zack Snyder. But there appears to be a large, fervent fan base whose sensibilities align with Snyder's. There are many rumors surrounding the movement, from it being propped up by bots and astroturfed by an ad agency to Snyder's involvement in it, whether he coordinated it or merely took advantage of it. With several competing stories and egos, we may never know the full truth. That said, there were real people in that movement, impassioned individuals who had their own reasons for wanting to see Zack Snyder's vision of Justice League. And some joined together to do great acts of charity, donating more than $500,000 to the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. Others, on the other hand, sent death threats to the studio, targeting particular individuals involved in production and calling for the firing of anyone who got in Snyder's way. This obsessive parasocial behavior is weird, and if I may say so, fucked. I would have preferred that humanity could be good and pure, that the narrative would be WB listened to the fans to prop up their new streaming service rather than caving to the pressure of internet sociopaths. The psychological toll these trolls inflicted is inexcusable, but ultimately no one died. None of these death threats were enacted. Small blessings. In the end, what we got was a quite bad 2-hour version and a quite good 4-hour director's cut that I think benefited from the years that Snyder had to edit and re-edit the film, to mull over his decisions and consider how he could improve upon what he had started in 2017. And I think I'd prefer that to a 2.5/3-hour version. Like, I already saw how BVS turned out. I just wish that that timeline didn't also have a young woman who lost her life.